The date is December 18th, 1941. The Mediterranean is a black mirror, cold and indifferent to the war raging on its shores. But for Lieutenant Luigi Durand de la Penne, the water is not just an element, it is his only ally. He is sitting on the back of a Maiale, the big 22-foot-long manned torpedo that is little more than a modified explosive charge with a seat. Luigi is 27 years old, a member of the elite Decima Flottiglia MIS. He is dressed in a thick, rubberized diving suit that smells of sulfur and old grease. His oxygen mask is a primitive rebreather, a Davis apparatus that recycles his own breath to avoid leaving a trail of bubbles. Every inhalation is a struggle, the dry air scratching his throat, the metallic taste of soda lime lingering on his tongue. Beside him, his second man, Petty Officer Emilio Bianchi, is checking the magnetic compass. They are 6 meters below the surface, towed by the submarine Scurry to the mouth of the British naval base at Alexandria. The submarine has just released them into the dark. They are now alone in the most heavily guarded harbor in the world. Compass set, Bianchi signals with a squeeze on Luigi's shoulder. There are no radios here, no verbal commands, only the vibration of the electric motor and the rhythmic pulse of their own hearts. Luigi twists the throttle. The pig groans, its propeller churning the dark water. They are moving at 3 knots a walking pace in a world where speed is measured in knots and survival is measured in minutes. Ahead of them lies the Great Boom, a series of steel nets and mines designed to keep out anything larger than a fish. But the British didn't account for the human torpedo. The harbor entrance is a nightmare of steel and shadows. As they approach the outer defenses, Luigi feels a sudden, violent surge in the water. A British destroyer is entering the harbor, its massive propellers creating a vortex of bubbles and noise that threatens to flick the pig over. Down! Go down, Luigi thinks, pushing the diving planes forward. They descend to 10 meters, the pressure pressing the rubber suit against his skin. The sound of the destroyer's engines is a deafening roar, a mechanical heartbeat that shakes his very bones. This is the math of death for a frogman. If they are spotted now, a single depth charge will turn their lungs into jelly. They wait in the silt of the harbor floor, the darkness absolute. Luigi can feel the weight of the water above him, the human burden of a mission that requires absolute invisibility. He looks at his luminous watch. They have been submerged for 3 hours. Their oxygen is half gone. When the roar of the destroyer finally fades, they rise slowly, like ghosts from the mud. The steel nets are right in front of them. Luigi reaches out and touches the cold, barnacle-encrusted wire. It is a wall of death. But as the destroyer passes through the gate, the British sailors leave the nets open for a few precious seconds. Now, Luigi signals. He pushes the throttle to the maximum. The pig surges forward, slipping through the gap just as the steel gates begin to grind shut. They are inside. They are in the lion's den. Alexandria Harbor is a forest of steel. Massive battleships, cruisers, and tankers sit at anchor, their gray hulls looking like mountain ranges in the moonlight. Luigi searches for his target, the HMS Queen Elizabeth, a 30,000-ton Titan of the Royal Navy. He finds her at berth 5. She is beautiful and terrifying, a fortress of guns and armor that has dominated the Mediterranean for decades. To Luigi, she is not just a ship, she is the reason his country is losing the war. If he can sink her, the balance of power will shift in a single night. They dive again, approaching the battleship from the stern. The water here is foul, oily and thick with the refuse of 1,000 sailors. Luigi's hands are numb with cold, his fingers fumbling with the controls. The pig is heavy now, its batteries draining, its motor whining in protest. 20 meters, he mutters into his mask. They are directly under the Queen Elizabeth's keel. The massive hull looms above them like a dark sky. Luigi can hear the sound of the ship's internal machinery, the hum of generators, the clatter of boots on steel decks. It is so close he could reach out and touch the rivets. But then the pig fails. The motor sputters and dies. The torpedo begins to sink, dragging them toward the harbor floor. Luigi fights the controls, his lungs burning with the effort. They hit the mud with a dull thud. They are trapped under 30,000 tons of steel. Luigi realizes the motor is dead for good. The pig is now just a 500-pound explosive charge stuck in the mud. He looks at Bianchi. The second man is unconscious, his rebreather malfunctioning from the silt. Luigi is alone. He has a choice: abandon the mission and save his life, or finish the job by hand. He chooses the price of honor. He unstraps himself from the torpedo and begins to drag the explosive warhead toward the battleship's hull. Every inch is a battle. The mud is thick, pulling at his legs like quicksand. The pressure is a physical weight on his chest. He is moving a quarter-ton of TNT through the dark, using nothing but his own muscles and a desperate, fading will. Almost there. He gasps, his vision blurring. He reaches the keel. He attaches the magnetic clamps to the hull, the metal-on-metal clink sounding like a gunshot in the silent water. He sets the timer, 2 hours. E6 the aimer. He swims back to find Bianchi. He pulls his friend to the surface, gasping for air as they break the water's oily skin. They are right beside the Queen Elizabeth. A British sentry spots them immediately. "Halt! Who goes there?" Luigi doesn't answer. He is too tired to speak. He just floats there, a broken frogman in a rubber suit, waiting for the end. They are hauled onto the deck of the Queen Elizabeth. The British sailors are confused, looking at these sea monsters with a mix of fear and curiosity. They are taken to the captain's cabin, where Admiral Cunningham himself is waiting. "Where is the mine?" Cunningham demands. His voice is cold, the voice of an empire that does not expect to be challenged in its own harbor. Luigi remains silent. He knows the math of death. If he tells them, they will move the ship or find the mine. If he stays silent, he will die in the explosion. He looks at the clock on the wall. 05:30 a.m. 30 minutes left. The British take them down to the A turret directly above where the mine is attached. They lock them in a small steel compartment, hoping the fear of their own bomb will break them. Luigi sits on the cold floor, his head in his hands. He can hear the heartbeat of the ship. He can feel the timer ticking in his mind. He is not a hero in this moment. He is just a man waiting for a hammer to fall. At dull 5:50 a.m., he calls for the guard. "I must speak to the captain." He is taken back to the bridge. "Admiral," Luigi says, his voice steady. "In 10 minutes, your ship will be destroyed. You must evacuate your men." Cunningham stares at him. "Where is the mine?" "I will not tell you, but your men must leave." Cunningham realizes the Italian is telling the truth. He orders the evacuation. Luigi is taken back to the hold, a prisoner of his own success. At 6:04 a.m., the world ends for the HMS Queen Elizabeth. The explosion is not a sound. It is a physical blow. The 500 pounds of TNT ignite under the keel, creating a massive gas bubble that lifts the 30,000-ton battleship out of the water. The steel plates buckle, the rivets shearing off like bullets. Luigi is thrown against the bulkhead, the air knocked out of his lungs. The lights go out. The ship groans, a sound of dying metal that echoes through the dark. He can feel the Queen Elizabeth settling into the mud, the harbor water rushing into her shattered hull. He has done it. He has sunk a battleship with a pig, but the victory is hollow. As the smoke clears and the British sailors scramble to save their ship, Luigi realizes the moment of realization. He hasn't just destroyed a ship, he has destroyed the illusion of safety. The great empire is bleeding. He is taken back to the deck. The Queen Elizabeth is sitting on the bottom, her deck's awash but her flag still flying. Cunningham looks at Luigi. There is no hatred in his eyes, only a strange, quiet respect. "You are a brave man, Lieutenant," Cunningham says, "but you have started a fire you cannot put out." Luigi Durand de la Penne spent the rest of the war in a British prisoner of war camp. He watched from behind barbed wire as the Mediterranean changed from an Italian lake to an Allied highway. He listened to the news of the Sire being sunk, of his brothers in the Decima Mas being hunted down one by one. He felt the human burden of the survivor. He had achieved the impossible, but his country was still collapsing. He realized that 1,000 human torpedoes couldn't stop the industrial sledgehammer of the British and American empires. This is the tragedy of the enemy perspective. It is the story of the elite warrior who wins the battle but loses the world. Luigi realized that the Maiale was a weapon of desperation. a beautiful but futile gesture in a war of assembly lines and oil tankers. He thought of the Queen Elizabeth every night. He wondered if the men he had saved by warning the admiral were now the ones bombing his home in Genoa. The massive death always had a remainder. The war ended not with a bang, but with a handshake. In 1945, Luigi was released and returned to a broken Italy. But his story was not over. In a ceremony that would become legendary in naval history, Luigi was awarded the Gold Medal of Military Valor, Italy's highest honor. But the man who stepped forward to pin the medal on his chest was not an Italian general. It was Admiral Cunningham. The man whose ship Luigi had sunk was now honoring his courage. It was a moment that transcended the war, a moment where the enemy became a brother in arms. It was a fair fight, Cunningham whispered as he pinned the gold cross to Luigi's uniform, and you fought it well. Luigi looked at the Admiral. He saw the same eyes he had seen in the dark of the Queen Elizabeth's bridge. He realized then that the war was a storm that had passed, leaving behind only the survivors to rebuild the ruins. Years later, Luigi would return to Alexandria. The harbor was different now, the gray warships replaced by white cruise liners and rusty tankers. But the great boom was still there, a rusted skeleton of steel in the water. He stood on the pier and looked out at Bear 5. He could still see the Queen Elizabeth in his mind, a silver giant in the moonlight. He could still feel the cold of the rubber suit and the taste of the soda lime. He realized that the human torpedo was a symbol of a lost era, an era where a single man could change the course of history with nothing but a pig and a heart full of duty. But it was also a warning. Technology was moving faster than the human spirit. The next war wouldn't be fought with frogmen and magnetic mines. It would be fought with buttons and screens. He saw a group of young Italian naval cadets standing near him. They looked at him with awe, seeing the hero of Alexandria. He wanted to tell them the truth. He wanted to tell them that the metal was heavy and the memories were heavier. The story of the human torpedo is a story of the moment of realization, the day a warrior realized that his courage was a small light in a very large dark. Luigi Durand de la Penne died in 1992, one of the last of the Decima Mas legends, but his legacy lives on in every Special Forces unit in the world. The pig is now a museum piece, a rusted tube of steel that looks more like a toy than a weapon of war. But if you go to the harbor of Alexandria at dawn, when the mist is thick and the water is still, you might still hear the faint hum of an electric motor. You might still see a trail of bubbles rising from the silt. It is the ghost of a swallow that tried to stop the giants. It is the reminder that the math of death always equals 0, and the only thing that survives the fire is the truth.